Well, I'm going to give you a slightly heterodox opinion about tithing. I'll just let it right out of the gate. There's very weak support for tithing in the New Testament. Okay. Well, how do you square that with what we find in the Old Testament, where it was an obligation? In many places in the New Testament, some of the disciples, even Jesus himself, by word and by deed, said that portions of the law have been fulfilled. We have an example of that in the lesson from this morning. At one time, God said to the Israelites, don't do a lick of work on the Sabbath. Don't even lift a finger to turn a light on. And then at a later point, where he didn't tell everybody about this change of plan, but Jesus said, it is better to do good on the Sabbath than to do nothing. We'll change the rules. Well, the Pharisees weren't happy with that. Not everybody in the Christian movement was happy with some of the changes that was going on. Peter, for example, had a hard time. Imagine eating a ham sandwich. It just didn't square with his understanding what God had told his ancestors generations before. So I don't want to make a long exposition on the absence of tithing in the New Testament. I think we are left with something different. Now, the beauty of the tithe is that when you've given. It's like paying a sales tax. 8.875%. Yeah. So it's no higher. It's not less than that. It's what you're going to pay for a sales tax when you buy a box of Kleenex or a jug of Gatorade. It's real simple. You don't have to go through a moral turmoil figuring out how much am I going to pay for sales tax. It's already been decided for you. And with the absence of the tithing requirement in the New Testament, we're left with a more difficult rule to observe, and that's the law of love. And as it's expressed in many ways, the law of generosity. So I think that is the basis why I tithe. But there's other things that fold into it as well. I give to organizations and groups and individuals whose values and mission are consistent with my own. If an organization does not fit in under that umbrella, they're not going to get a nickel out of me. NRA, forget it. They've stopped sending me, their money requests a long time ago because they know they're not going to get a dime out of me. So I give to organizations that are consistent with what I think is very important, my values and my priorities. And I also give to organizations, that I realize need support. God is not going to write a check to National Grid to pay the heating bill. God is not going to write a check to Pastor Katrina to pay her salary. God is not going to write a check, to Con Ed. Yeah, that's up to us. And not a whole lot of prayer is going to make that any different. It's up to us. So if you want an organization to continue, if you derive value and meaning and purpose from your participation in this, you're obliged to give. It's just as practical as that. A couple of other things I want to toss in that don't necessarily fold neatly into that main theme. But one is that I've heard people say, "Oh man, I don't have at the end of the month I don't have enough money." My answer to that is, at the end of the month, sit down and figure out where every dollar you received went to. Every dollar. If you really want to get compulsive, down to the quarter. And I think you'd be quite surprised, that there are a lot of things, which are nice to have, but not necessary. And you can do without them, or you can cut back on them. That's fine. The other suggestion that I want to advance is that to get used to giving, start out with people you know. I think most of you still have parents living. Do something nice for them. Slip mom $50 every once in a while. Just say, go buy flowers. Something nice. Because once you get used to the idea of giving to people you know and love, who you value and appreciate, it becomes a little easier to give to people you don't know, but with whom you can identify in some way. And it's not going to be so hard to write that check or to mail off that $50 bill. What do I get out of this? I get the satisfaction of knowing that organizations and bodies that are important to me are supported and sustained. The burden of doing that doesn't fall exclusively on me, but it falls on the community that participates in those organizations, the congregation of this church, all the people who use natural gas and electricity, who use the streets and hope they never have to have an EMT call. Yeah. But, the value that we get from giving, is the feeling that, we are doing something that's important, useful, and necessary. Thank you.